Nintendo was once the market dominator with their popular first-party games ranging from Mario to Smash. Their consoles were always one of the best-selling, but after the success of the Wii, they were not able to launch another successful product, and their stock prices plummeted. However, after the recent Switch, they have been on a rapid rise. So how did the Switch change Nintendo's fate? Make sure to stick around till the end to find out. Welcome to Hari's Hobbies. So I'm just going to start off with Nintendo's first console because that's already a really long story. If you guys want me to cover the first 100 years of Nintendo, make sure to comment that down below. The whole journey started with the NES or Nintendo Entertainment System, which came out in 1985 in North America. The system had already come out in Japan 2 years earlier, but there was very little optimism that it would also do well in the US. This is because this release was right after the 1983 video game crash, in which the market was oversaturated with low-quality rushed games. Even the US CEO was very concerned, and as a result, they started off with a soft launch in New York in 1985 and launched nationwide in 1986. But it quickly caught on as it came with 17 excellent games. This system introduced Mario, Zelda, and Smash to millions of new players, and these have been enduring classics ever since. This console was on the expensive side, costing about $200 then, which is about $475 now, so this definitely stifled the reach of the console. But nonetheless, this is one of the most iconic consoles of all time, selling 62 million units during its lifetime. And soon after this, Nintendo launched the Game Boy, which was a handheld device which was much cheaper at $90 in 1989. This came with the iconic games Tetris and Super Mario Land. This system was met with intense competition from the Atari Lynx and Sega Game Gear. Those actually had better hardware, but the Game Boy had better game titles, and this accompanied with the momentum from the NES really made this a successful product. They would go on to sell 119 million units of the Game Boy, and this along with the NES would really put Nintendo on the map for the US video game market. And they weren't stopping right there. In 1991, they came out with the SNES for the same price. There was strong competition from the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis, but in the end the SNES came out on top. This had some of their most iconic titles including Super Metroid, Yoshi's Island, Earthbound, Super Mario World, and Final Fantasy VI. In the end, they were able to come out with 49 million sales. While this wasn't as good as the NES, it definitely was a great step. And in 1995, they came out with the Virtual Boy, which is one of their worst products of all time, and it didn't even reach 1 million sales, reaching only 770,000. It was supposed to be a virtual reality type of device, but it was way too compromised and underdeveloped. There wasn't even enough first-party games to go along with it. And I'm not too sure about the purpose of the device either. Was it a successor to the SNES, or was it starting a completely new lineup? Because at this point, they already had the N64 plan, which came out the following year. The Virtual Boy was a really weird step from Nintendo, but since they had the N64 that came out the next year in 1996 for $200, that was able to cover up this issue. And the N64 was a revolutionary release of the time as it came with Super Mario 64 and Pilot Wings 64. The 3D renderings in these games were the first of its kind, and it really wowed people. Also, the controller introduced analog controls to the world. But just because it was a great console with great games didn't mean that it performed exceptionally well, because there was severe competition from PS2. Nintendo significantly suffered right here as they chose not to support game discs like all of their competitors, and this really lost them third-party support from which they never really recovered. They got 33 million sales on the N64, which was morphed by the PS2's 150 million plus sales, but this was still respectable and just enough to keep them a significant player in the video game market. In March of 2001, they came out with the Game Boy Advance, which is one of Nintendo's most conservative launches of all time. But this wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It was a simple, great design that served as a replacement for the Game Boy. It was backwards compatible, and they had great games itself, building on Nintendo's 2D repertoire. There was Super Mario Advance and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. It was nothing spectacular, but it was all just normal. There was a problem of dim screens, however, and a lot of people did complain and start modding the Game Boy Advances. But other than that, it was a great option over the 12-year-old aging Game Boy. It wasn't that innovative or anything, but it fit in the right spot at the right time, and as a result, they got really great sales of 81 million. In September of 2001, they came out with the Gamecube, and this had really strong launch titles, including Luigi's Mansion, Super Monkey Ball, Wave Race, Star Wars Rogue Leader, and soon Super Mario Sunshine. But this came out during a time when the PS2 was well established, and the purple Gamecube simply looked like the kiddie option. And it still used cartridges, which all resulted in really bad hardware sales of only 22 million. This was a really good device and had really good games, but it simply could not excel due to the time period that it was released and the lack of CD-ROM. But despite this, the GameCube made sure that Nintendo was still out there in the video game market. But right after that, they would come out with the best product they have ever launched in November of 2004, which was the DS. At first, this device was actually met with a lot of criticism. Most people simply did not understand why you needed two screens or touch implementation, and as a result, it was often ridiculed. But after a year and several iconic game releases including New Super Mario Bros., Animal Crossing Wild World, and Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, the DS really started catching on. And plus, this was the first Nintendo device that you can use to play over Wi-Fi. This device is marketed to a completely new audience, an older audience who wouldn't actually consider playing games on a traditional home console. This new demographic, new games, online capability, along with backwards compatibility really made the DS unstoppable. They reached over 154 million sales, with over 140 DS games reaching over 1 million sales each. What started off as a skeptical launch turned out to be the biggest success of all time for Nintendo. And this great momentum and success carried on to the Wii, which came out in November of 2006. Again, it was met with a lot of criticism. Most people thought it was a silly name with a stupid TV-style controller, and it was a very odd release from Nintendo. It came in at $250 and included a game, and it finally ditched the cartridges for CD-ROM. It launched with Zelda Twilight Princess and Wii Sports, which most avid gamers dismissed as simplistic. But the rest of the world considered it a marvel, and it was very popular with families. And it came with great launches including Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Galaxies, Mario Kart, and of course Super Smash Bros., which were all very popular. And the motion sensors were implemented so well with Nintendo games, and many people loved it. But the motion sensors were often really bad when it came to third-party games. But Nintendo would not feel the effects of this on the Wii, and they would cross over 100 million sales. And with that, the DS and the Wii really helped Nintendo dominate the gaming market in the early 2000s. And then, the 3DS came out in February of 2011, and it was nothing revolutionary. It was literally a DS with a 3D gimmick, but the 3D gimmick was very popular at the time. It came out with some nice first-party games including Mario Kart and Super Mario 3D Land, but the third-party support was lackluster, which included Asphalt 3D and Super Monkey Ball 3D. But despite this bad selection of games, the momentum from the Wii and DS along with the 3D gimmick really made the 3DS very powerful. But originally, the price was outrageous at $250, which put it in the price range of home consoles, but this was quickly reduced to $170 and it was much more acceptable. And at this price, most people thought of it as a good purchase as it would replace their DS from 2004, and plus, the 3DS was backwards compatible. The 3DS really succeeded as a good replacement for the DS, and today, they have over 70 million sales on the 3DS. The 3DS is like the opposite of the Gamecube. It wasn't that good of a device and didn't have that good games, but it sold well nonetheless. And then, there was a Wii U. And we all know that it did really bad, but here are the top reasons why they weren't really able to sell that well. First of all, the controllers were really confusing. There was a gamepad, the Wii remotes, and the Wii U Pro controller. And in a lot of games, even first-party games like Splatoon, you couldn't even use the Wii U Pro controller or Wii remotes, you had to use the gamepad. And the Wii U was very underpowered. It was on the level of the PS3 and Xbox 360. These would be completely obliterated by the Xbox One and PS4. And of course, it had terrible third-party support. It was very underpowered and couldn't even run a lot of the games that the PS4 and Xbox One could run. And so, third-party publishers had to water down their games. And as the Wii U got bad sales, publishers simply did not want to publish more games for the Wii U. and it basically had no internal storage. It had a measly 16GB on the base version and an awesome 32GB on the deluxe version. This wasn't even comparable to the 500GB and 1TB hard drives in the PS4 and Xbox One. And the Wii U was very expensive for what it was. The base model was $300 and the deluxe model was $350. The Xbox One and PS4 were much more powerful for the same price. And Nintendo really failed to attract the casual gamers that really bought into the Wii due to really bad marketing. They thought it was just a Wii with a gamepad or a HD Wii. They didn't realize that it was a new console. This was mainly due to the confusing naming scheme and the bad marketing. And the core gamers had already left Nintendo with the launch of the Wii over to the Xbox 360 and PS3. So at this point, Nintendo was competing with Microsoft and Sony for the core gamers, which obviously wasn't gonna go very well. So clearly, Nintendo did not do well with presenting the Wii U. There's a lot of trash talk about the Wii U, but let me just say something about the Wii U. It's really not that bad of a console. Yes, it takes forever to turn on, and it's not as powerful as the Xbox One or PS4. But the Nintendo games for the Wii U were actually really great, and most of the very successful Switch games were actually ports from the Wii U. They had Mario Kart 8, Super Smash in HD, Super Mario 3D World, Bayonetta 2, and Splatoon, and much more. They had outstanding first-party games, and they looked fabulous on 1080p screens. Most people didn't even have 4K screens, so it really doesn't make a difference. People say that the Nintendo Wii U failed because they had less storage and it was underpowered, but that's really not the reason because the Nintendo Switch is also underpowered and does not have storage. But the main problem for the Wii U was that it was marketed really badly. It was marketed towards the hardcore gamers who had already left and gone to the PS4 and Xbox One, and as for the casual gamers, most of them didn't even know what it was and had gone on to mobile gaming. So, Nintendo was stuck in a very weird place and chasing a demographic that didn't even exist. They were chasing after hardcore gamers who were okay with underpowered devices just so they could play Nintendo games. But they should have been going after a casual gamer who could buy a Nintendo console to play Nintendo games and a few third-party games here and there. And a combination of all of these missteps led to very disappointing sales of 13 million units. And during this time, the 3DS XL and 2DS were also released, but those were nothing really big and they did alright. And this left Nintendo in the worst position that they have been in since the late 1990s. And Nintendo was stuck in this abyss until July of 2016 when they launched Pokemon Go. This introduced Nintendo to casual gamers once again. And soon enough, they announced the Nintendo Switch, which was once again seen with a lot of skepticism. Hardcore gamers were looking for something much more powerful and they didn't like where Nintendo was going, and this seemed to be like a repeat of the Wii U. It again didn't have that much storage and it was very underpowered compared to the PS4 and Xbox One. But it was targeted at the casual gamer, which is the right move for Nintendo. It's a good thing that they didn't target it at the hardcore gamers because there's a lot of competition there, and the console market for hardcore gamers is actually kind of dying out, especially as PC gaming has become more affordable with the launch of Ryzen that bought high cores for low prices. Anyways, the Nintendo Switch had a clear purpose, which was to play great first-party games anywhere with anyone at any time, and they made sure to fix all of the mistakes they made with the Wii U. Sure, they still had small storage, but this was targeted at the casual gamer who wasn't going to be going out and downloading 100GB plus games. Sure, it was still underpowered, but that's really all you need to run Nintendo games. And it had clear controllers, Joy-Cons, and the Pro Controller. And the price of $300 was actually acceptable as it served two purposes, which is a home console and a handheld gaming device. It was nowhere close to being a revolutionary idea, but it was pulled off perfectly. It had seamless transitions between the two modes, and the loading times were outstanding. It was like turning on an iPad, not turning on a console, and this made it really modern. There was nothing crazy, it was simple, easy to use, and marketed correctly with outstanding games. And that's really all you need, and today they have over 35 million sales globally. And their stock price has made a great bounce back, and while it is not as high as before, it is on the right track. And with the Nintendo Switch, it really looks like Nintendo found their perfect niche, which is to offer great first-party games in a simple, straightforward console. And the fact that it can work as a portable gaming device and a home console just makes it even better. and the market has responded well, so Nintendo is definitely on the right track. For a lot of us, Nintendo is a very nostalgic company that's played an important role in many of our childhood entertainments. Recently, they made a couple of missteps and launched a Wii U, which really brought down the company and caused 3 years of negative operating profits. But since then, they have really corrected their mistakes and have come out on top with the Nintendo Switch. And right now, it definitely seems like the Switch has allowed Nintendo to come back, and today, they're here to stay. But that's all I have for you guys on Nintendo. Make sure to comment down below what company you would like me to cover next. Also, if you guys liked this video, then make sure to drop a like and consider subscribing if you would like to see more videos just like this one. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.